Got coffee.
That's good. There.
Said a prayer.
Said a prayer? Say a prayer.
We said a prayer.
We said a prayer, yeah. A beautiful one, actually.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it is. The articulation of the feelings that are coming from your heart towards that individual, how they impacted your life. Powerful. I mean, that's just the power of where we're at. The world doesn't stop, man.
The world doesn't stop.
Keeps ticking. We are short little visitors here for the time being in the grand scheme of it all.
Yeah.
But in our own lives, like I was saying, it can be a long journey if you live it right.
It can be.
You know? And I
But
want it
no
to
matter
be
how light we live it.
it's still short. In the grand scheme of things, it's freaking not even a blink.
We just don't,
Not even a blink.
we just don't know how the story goes, But let's kick it.
Here we are.
Brother Brik, it's been a
Here we
minute,
go.
dog.
It's been a minute, yes. Hello.
Beautiful
Ooh,
people.
Look at that. Let's keep it in there.
Coffee time with Coach. I am Coach Christian, and
I am Coach Brik.
it's been a minute, but we've had a lot of crazy minutes.
And more to come. You know, we keep on rocking. So it's been a good solid 4 weeks now. It would have to be 4 weeks.
Yeah. I believe so. I
Yeah,
believe it's been like a month.
Yeah, because I was out for 3 weeks and I've been back for weeks. That sounds about right. Actually, a week to the day. I get back, Tuesday, tomorrow. Working things out. And I was out on an epic journey. And you were here holding down the fort.
And then I was out on an epic journey.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Seattle. Nice. A lot of stuff to cover.
Yeah. Do you, I think because it's probably something that most people don't get to dive into very often.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to get into your
My journey.
your adventure?
My yearly pilgrimage, so to speak. To, I guess we'll have two facets to it. First part, which pertains a lot to what we do here, is Mini Monkey had a competition in Vegas. So she was out there competing for the Ultimate Ninja Athletic Association. I believe is what that is. And it was cool. It's another league that she partakes in. Unfortunately, Tuesday heading out, we were leaving Wednesday. She got a stomach bug that put her in the bathroom and had some good amount of diarrhea for a day or two. So that rolled into the traveling, getting out, hotels, Vegas, moving, all that movement. And she competed on Friday. So by the time we hit the course, she was a little not herself. She was still a little fatigued. And it's interesting. It's good to see her process it and go through it. And as a parent and as a coach, and someone working with kids, also understanding that dynamic of how to navigate, a really good athlete that's not feeling well and doesn't have the adult perspectives on pushing a certain way. They're still a kid at heart. And then also seeing that kid maturing.
Yeah.
Where she still went through the course, and how many kids would be like, I don't want to do it. I don't feel good. No, it was just like, we're here. I'm going to try my best. And she gave her best. And still with her best, she ended up in the middle of the field, which is still solid. I just, we know that she could have been
filmed it.
Top 10. Top 10. Even the rope climb was kind of like out there. But it's all good. So off to Vegas, which was like really bizarre. I've been to Vegas in like damn near 25 years, and it was one of the days 115.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And I had this like feeling of walking out as we went out in the evening to go grab some water, interestingly enough, and walking outside after being in the casino all day, just kind of surreal in its own right, air conditioned and all that and whatever, whatnot. And we stayed at Circus, so it was like a circus themed hotel. There was a trapeze thing, there's a whole circus in the middle of the hotel, really like surreal. We walk out and it was like Tatooine on Star Wars, like the desert planet, and when the wind blew, it was like a blow dryer.
Yeah.
Like surreal. I've never quite experienced that. And that led us off into our journey to, after that we headed off to South Dakota, ultimately to Sundance, to our yearly pilgrimage and what we do out there. And the journey there, what brings us out there and how we pray and what we're praying for, and being able to commune with our inner self. And then it's a very challenging ceremony physically, so it kind of fits into the whole aspect of what we do. That endurance mindset. It's like, how much can you endure? And so it's kind of a delicate aspect of what I can share, what I feel comfortable sharing with about the ceremony, and what kind of should stay there and sacred. One aspect that here brought this is some sage from South Dakota. It grows there in the entire area, and gift this to you right here. It's like, and the sage is, and those sages are actually underneath our chanupas, are sacred pipes. So they actually stay there blessed all 4 days. And the sage is really important to keep things clear and wakan, which is sacred. So in the dance, we actually make bracelets and anklets, and we wear them on our head. So that way we're staying clear energetically, and you're not really touching anyone, no one's really touching you. The aspect of staying wakan is really important. That's why we purify. We sweat lodge in the morning, and we have a sweat lodge in the evening. I don't know how many of you out there know sweat lodges or how that pertains, but I guess some of you have been watching us a little while, probably have an idea. We've talked about it a lot. And it's just an important thing about purifying and keeping clean, which resonates with everything that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
The physical aspect, when we're eating, how we eat, proper hydration, proper nutrition as best as we can, and relative to who we are, and always tweaking that, right? You're vegan, carnivore in the journey. We've got at least vegetarian, right? It's part of that journey of tinkering and finding out how can I make this a little bit better. It makes me think of
Evolve.
Yeah, completely evolve. That's the aspect. Just makes me think about your bro that you were just sharing with that just crossed over. You find out, someone that was very much in that mindset of taking care of themselves, having some kind of accident, and having their life cut short is always so shocking and surprising. And someone is putting out the energy to have people live a better quality of life. Right? I think that's really important. And if you want to touch a little bit on Andy, because we're talking about both, but I feel like Sundance is about life and death. It's about life, right? Aspect about the life that we live. It's a big ceremonial aspect in that way. And to me, I've learned in the ceremonial path that the biggest ceremony in life is our life, right? That the idea that our body is our temple, right? I've always resonated with that, that Eastern philosophy is like, yeah, I totally get it. Take care of your temple. Well, you're taking care of your temple in the journey of the ceremony that is your life. If you choose to live it that way, it is that way regardless, but whether you consciously are doing so, then it's different. Then you can think about things in a different way.
Yeah, let's, for one, thank you for this.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and money. Keep that on your altar. And you can use it to just, wrap a ribbon around the bottom of it, or like, make it kind of like a wand, and you can kind of you can kind of clear yourself out when you're aggravated, and then when things really hit the fan, you can just burn a little bit. It burns differently than white sage. It's a different sage. It's a different species of sage. So it's a very, very strong energy. It clears the air in a certain way. And it can be, some people can find that stuff to be kind of however, but I've just been doing this long enough to know that there's power behind it.
Yeah.
Whether it's Pavlovian or whether it's placebo or whatever, I just know it works. I don't believe that's the case. I believe there's a strong power in it, but you're welcome to that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, crossing over, it's not anything you can ever really prepare for. And with the passing of Andy this weekend, it hit me different than any other person that's passed before, partly because we were talking earlier, I try to make a point to see people from my past, and it just hadn't worked out. I hadn't caught up with him in a while. But the only reason that there is a Coach Christian is because this guy Andy believed it so. Because when I met Andy, I couldn't even walk properly. My leg was so jacked up, I had no ankle range of motion. My back was completely locked into place.
I mean, for those perhaps that don't know, Christian had a pretty epic, catastrophic failure on a motorcycle.
Yeah. Maybe the most important failure of my entire life.
Wow, yeah. Yeah.
And
phrase it that way, frame it that way. It's so true.
You know, because of that accident, as I stopped walking with a walker, way of life became important in a way that it hadn't been previous to being in bed for months.
And at that point, you were already pretty large.
At that point, I was huge.
Yeah. 250 plus.
I think I was like 254 when I got in the accident, and then I gained like 50 pounds being in bed.
Wow. Okay, that makes sense.
Roughly, you know, you're not
yeah,
moving shit.
Yeah.
Not moving, plus eating ice cream and cereal. It's a very serious combination for body composition change. In the wrong direction, but nevertheless body composition change. So what it was, I'll tell the whole story real quick. I walked into the Institute of Human Performance in Boca, where Andy was at the time. A stack of credit cards that were all mostly maxed out, but there was like a couple $100 on one, maybe $800 on another, maybe only $100 on one. I didn't care. I had lost my ability to move properly. I was in astronomical amounts of debt.
Lots of pain.
I have chronic pain now, but now it's like a manageable thing. At the time, it was at the time it was kind of nutty.
And how much were you willing to take painkillers?
I didn't take any painkillers.
Yeah, you were pretty adamant about that, right?
Yeah.
Like straight edge max.
Yeah, I didn't. I had lost friends to painkillers.
You're already aware of that at that point.
I found out about OxyContin when my boy Jeff passed away.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what it was previous to Jeff.
And that's exactly the way to put you on too.
Rest in peace. You know what it is? So, I go in there and I'm willing to bet the house on being able to move better. And I meet this guy Andy, and he was like a younger dude. And I thought going in there that I would be working with this guy JC, who was like the head guy at this place. But then when I met Andy, I was like, oh no, this guy's awesome. And Andy had a way of seeing things and making you believe things. I talk a lot about, you've heard me talk about manifesting things. Almost like I am his manifestation. Like, even when I wore size 44 pants and I couldn't do a pull-up and I couldn't squat without holding the edges of the wall, he believed I could become this. He believed it when my own friends didn't believe that. When people thought it was nuts that I was spending that amount of money going to the Institute of Human Performance. Like, I'm not a pro athlete, I'm just a fucking broken fat guy. The truth is that pro athletes invest in themselves and average guys don't. And I had to make an investment in myself so that I could fucking get this far.
That's a profound concept.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
there's a lot there, actually.
I met this dude, and he literally changed. I think about him all the time, and a lot of people have heard me talk about him, but maybe not enough. Like, not enough people understand what kind of impact he had on me wanting to do for other people what he did for me. Because I had no other way to. The money I paid him in currency doesn't fucking add up to where I am right now.
That's what you got from the return. Yeah, absolutely. Investment versus
And
return.
the only way I can pay that
is forward.
The only way I can honor him now
Even more so, yeah.
really is to be the fucking best version of myself in a way to illuminate other people to be the best versions of themselves.
And that's the aspect and key of life, and why I think your story is so fascinating is the aspect of the inspiration of the journey, because you could do it, because you were XYZ, that person, and then you've been able to transform and know that it can be done. And then a lot of people have that doubt. It's like that picture I posted the other day with that 68-year-old guy in the gym. He just walked by me, and he just looked so stacked and so confident, like arms. I mean, the picture didn't do him justice seeing him in person. And then I asked him, hey, you look, I told him, right, you look great. And he just like smiled and looked. You can tell he was like really proud. And like whatever. And like thinking about it, I'm like, I'm gonna get a picture of this dude, because he just looked so jacked and so cool. And I walked up to him and I'm like, hey, do you mind if I get a picture? And of course he smiled. He's like, yeah. I'm like, what's your name? He's like, Russ. I'm like, man, you look great. And he's like, yeah, I'm 68 years old. And starts talking. He's like, I'm training for my first bodybuilding tournament. And he starts laughing about it, kind of like chuckling, kind of like, yeah, why not? And
when's he on the podcast?
Yeah, I know. That's why. Well, I'm gonna have to find him at the gym again. I didn't get his info. I think he would be an interesting character, and I'm sure has an incredible story to why he's there. But he is the example of what can be done, right? 68 years old and is in the best shape of his life. Not like just fit, but I'm talking bodybuilding fit. The guy's biceps were defined and cut, and he just looked phenomenal. And excuses, right? It's like he is leading by example. So that's why I wanted the picture so I could show other people and be like, hey, this is don't tell me you're too old. It was like, oh, I'm older than you. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, you're, however old, and here he is, this person, pulling it off.
Yeah.
And once again, you and I both know from our journeys as, people with no legs and no arms climbing mountains and doing Spartans and doing hurricane heats and just running marathon and on and on and on. It's just limitation of the mind. And then something that you touched on too is like your friends, right? Having that not believing in you, and if not only not believing in you, but talking shit to you for sure, because that's what those people do, and not necessarily even in a way that they were trying to put you down, but they were in that paradigm that, why are you wasting your money, right?
Yes.
This isn't going to do anything for you. Save your money, bro. It's like, come on. It's like they're coming from a place of actual, not necessarily being, some of them, at least, not wanting to be a dick and put you down that way, but they were putting that limitation on you, right? And someone like Andy, and what you've taken from it and what we're working on is the exact opposite. We want to be able to build people up and know that it's limitless. Limitation is the mind. You don't want to put that in a box like that, because then you're done, because you're gonna believe it and that's the end of it. So I think it's really profound to be able to really pay tribute to Andy in a really good way, and I think you have already, but I think now it adds to the why, right?
It adds to the why. I fucking, in honor of you, I'm going to impact 1 million fucking lives. 100 fucking %.
1 million lives, it's a good number.
100 fucking %. And it might sound like an audacious fucking goal. It's not. It is what it is. I'm in a different state, different city every weekend, coaching people. Like
And you have the social media tools, which is very interesting and challenging for us that don't want to be on social media, don't want to be that person. Like I've always been good being in the front of the cameras and stuff and all that.
I have to make a post today.
Yeah,
I hate that shit.
I'm good about doing it because I've been a musician my life. I don't mind the interviews, and I'm good and would have a ham. And early on, I had freaking egos the size of the fucking Rock of Gibraltar. So I'm good with that aspect. It was more the other aspects of getting tied into the social media and the algorithms and how that works and whatever, and being part of that paradigm, using that term again, of whatever that is. But in my experience, I don't know if I share this with you, we haven't really talked. This is the first time Christian and I have gotten together too. We talked for like 10 minutes the other day, so we can talk smack for like days right now. We have a lot of catching up to do, so much. But when I was out at the reservation, I've been posting a lot and posting more frequently, and I started posting more on Facebook, which I have a lot of friends on there, and a lot of the people I have friends on there are people on the res. A lot of them are still on Facebook, especially the older people. Facebook, the MySpace, right? They're still in that that platform. And I had in the course of the 8 days that I was there, I had 20, 30 people come up to me and just give me thanks or comment or further encourage me to keep doing what I was doing about my post because it was encouraging them. Like whether they had signed up to do a race or whether that very day they decided to start a diet or go out and just work out, or something I posted on my daughter, showing their kids, and hey, look at my friend's kid, and look what she's doing, and like, however it is and is developing, it was very encouraging to me to know that, hey, these things are actually having an impact. That's 20 or 30 people that I touched in some way, shape, or form.
Yes. That
did something that day or thought about the movement to get them to that step, or nudge them along. And that's epic, that's epic. You want to work on one, you want to save one person. It's like we're talking about exponential, getting to that point of what you're talking about,
seeing a different pattern.
And then ultimately, for me, still my focus still being a lot on the kids, right? Because I still, I sit there and I still have this strong feeling with the kids. It's like, man, those bad patterns are still brand new. If you're 8 years old, that negative mindset is only 8 years old, and at best, right? As it's developing, and so much easier to retool and reprogram, especially in that developing mind that's not set in the pattern like as an adult. As you all know, like we always talk about this too. It's like that accident is the level that you needed to be to have your life change.
Yes.
Anything short of that, you would have just continued the same pattern because you were so ingrained.
It's like that for so many people.
Because it's because it's a pattern. So it's the aspect of having our mind programmed. That's why Tai Lopez talks about he won't take on anybody to follow him unless they are like younger than 22 or 23 years old, in that range, for the very few exceptions, because he knows that once that point out, they're already really ingrained. It's going to take a lot more work to even change the mindset. Whereas to a 16 or 17-year-old, these are epiphanies, and they change, and the programming changes, and then it sets them up for life.
Yeah.
It's that rich dad, poor dad thing. Learn these things when you're a kid, as opposed to trying to figure it out when you're older. Doesn't mean that these changes, and I think, I'd like to think that doesn't require that all the time, but it does. My journey too, and going into the hospital and spending, being diagnosed with aplastic anemia and having a blood disorder and spending 40 days in the hospital, like a greater part in oncology ward, and seeing people that have stage 4 lymphoma cancer, like my roommate at the time, this older this Haitian pastor actually, and realizing that as sick as I was like, I'm sick, but I'm not that sick, and I need to get the hell out of there because this is not where I belong, right? And then the journey beginning. There's some aspect that they work, or they understand that in for medicine men and people, medicine men and women, to be to go through that, to be able to help people to heal, sometimes you need to go through that yourself. You need to have that near-death experience to be able to have the juxtaposition to understand
the perspective.
It's the perspective to understand that work needs to be done, like curanderos, very much. I don't like using the word shaman, but in that aspect, for that term, as most people understand, for them to have that understanding, to be able to do that work, they need to be able to die and be reborn and come to that level. It's like, when you were knocked up in the hospital, you checked out. When you were out and you were all pumped up on the pain pills and the pain medication when you initially got there, those first days you're in and out, right? That's how it was when I was in the hospital. It's like some days I was in this reality, and then other moments, days, they were irrelevant. I was in another realm.
No concept of time.
In space.
Yeah.
You're journeying in and out, and that's the realm where we're able to get a lot of healing done, because then you can do the reprogramming, because then you're dealing with something bigger, which is outside of the mind operating system. But man, that's powerful. I think it solidifies the collective why, of what we're doing and how we want to impact and help people. And the journey, it's like we're living our life, we're experiencing it to the fullest, and having the impact of touching other people's lives to leave them in a better place. That is the key of life, right? And then we have different tools and different understandings and different ways of approaching that, but that's why we're doing something like this. We're sharing these moments and these thoughts to inspire and let people feel a moment of like, hey man, I can do this. Not only can I do this, but I have to do this. And that when your want becomes a have to, it's like, I think Tony Robbins talks about it, like, you know, you when you're when you have to have something is when you have it. When your desire to have it is the most necessary thing, that's when things start changing for you. It's like it needs to happen that way, because if you're going to accept whatever's being given to you, if you don't feel like you deserve anything better than that.
Deserve is like a big fucking word, right? Because a lot of us don't live our best life because we think we don't deserve it. Because we see other people and we think they deserve something that we don't.
And then it triggers sometimes, in some of us, it triggers that jealousy, and that's a negative dynamic.
And envy.
And envy, even if you're not doing it in a malicious manner, it's that feeling of, oh man, that guy, he's so lucky.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Like, oh, and even that way, you know, we've all had that. I mean, I was around me, I had people, oh, you're so lucky for this or so that. And I'm just, in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm lucky for what? Look at that guy, you know, and it continues, right? Everyone's always looking around and going, because they want to be there. They're not happy in where they're at.
And because you never see the whole fucking story.
Overnight success. Yeah, bitch. I've been playing bass for 34 years. That was overnight, you know? It's like, I always thought that was a funny overnight success. And where an athlete just all of a sudden makes it, it's like countless hours that nobody was watching.
Years. What about years of work?
Just that nobody saw, right? Or that few saw, right?
And outside of like your actual body, it's deserving the people in your life. Like, so many people are in shitty relationships.
I did it numerous times, over and over and over again.
So did I.
Numerous. Sometimes the same girl twice, because I didn't learn once. My grandmother married my grandfather twice. Horrible. Just a very troubled man, and it's just like, didn't learn the first time, you have to learn it again, right?
Yeah, man. And the reality is, like, back to how this started, the timeline in the big scheme of things is so fucking short. You gotta love yourself enough to be around people that love you, because we don't have time for you to be around some motherfucker that takes you for granted.
Yeah.
That is real shit.
Or want to bring you down. Crabs in the bucket shit. 100%. There's this, I was listening to Eddie Pinero. There's this new guy I just discovered. A new guy to me. He's not new. But he's talking about that story of...
He's not new? He's not an overnight success?
No, exactly. Exactly. And I shared the story. I actually wanted to put a post on Instagram. I still may do so because it just really resonated with me a lot. Especially coming out of the reservation, because of the way things out there. It's its own... it's kind of like its own world, dimension in itself. But anyway, he's talking about the frogs hopping through the forest, and two of them fall into a hole, right? And it's a deep hole. And then the other frogs are like, you know, struggling, trying to get out, and the frogs are just looking out, and the ones outside the hole, it's like, oh, and looking at it, it's like, look, it's hopeless. You gotta give up. Cameo appearance by Polly.
You know what I'm saying?
It was too quiet, too smooth. I'm sure now Mr. F will come down.
Bang.
Want to go outside. So the frogs fall in the hole, and the other frogs are outside. They're like, no, you can't do it. You gotta give up. It's too hard, and whatever. And they're like sitting there, and then one frog slowly, like, you know, gives up and then falls into, you know, slips in and falls into the pit deeper and ends up dying. And the other frog is still going, changing his angle and changing his approach. Eventually gets out of the hole, and the other frogs come up to it, and they're like, how did you do that? Like, didn't you hear us telling you that it was hopeless and whatever went on? And it turns out that frog is deaf. He couldn't hear the negative talk.
Damn, dude.
Right? Exactly. I was like, couldn't hear the negative thought to have them tell him he couldn't do it. So think about that in your day-to-day, because there are a lot of people that are with the best of intentions, like I said, wanting to say something, trying to give you good advice that is actually disempowering, right? Very disempowering. So listen to your inner drive, listen to your own heart. You know, one of the things out in the dance that really came to me in the journey was really the aspect I'm really aware of, but even more so is controlling the things that we can control, right? And one of the biggest things we can control is how we are thinking about ourselves and our present circumstance, and controlling that dynamic, controlling the fact that yes, we can control what I'm gonna put into my mouth, right? I understand that I understand it's an addiction, And I've had my own addictions to alcohol and drugs, definitely have dealt with it, so I know, even I said I hit my nose, it's like, it's almost Pavlovian. Understanding that I'm not saying it's easy, but it's still something that you can control. And ultimately, for the quality of life that you are destined to have, you have to control that. You have to be able to control that aspect so that you can step up and live the life that not only that you need to live, but ultimately I feel like that we need you to live. Because of this aspect, I'm coming out of being in the essence of tribal energetic existence, right? When we lived as tribal people, because no matter what part of the planet you're from, you're indigenous to some aspect, and at some point, whether it was 200 years ago, 500 years ago, or 5,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, you were tribal. We lived in a tribal setting, and we had parameters that required us to live together. It's like the bison have a way of living in the herd where they keep the babies in the middle, and then the moms and the older one, the men and the males rather on the side, and then the elders towards the back as they get aging and end up becoming sacrificed to the wolves so that the next generation can lead. There's this whole structural dynamic, and they all serve a purpose and a place, and we used to be as a society in that format. So having you be the best you can be is only going to make things better for me, because when we go to battle, or if something happens, or if my kid or my family needs something, I can count on you to do the right thing, as you will be able to count on me. Same with our companions, and so on and so forth. So there's a concept, and unfortunately the world that we live in, as we moved into the cities, changed, and we've been more compartmentalized even further and more isolated with these devices, and inadvertently.
How many people don't even know their neighbors that live in these huge buildings?
No, and we've lived here long enough to know, you end up only really knowing your neighbors when there's a hurricane. Right? When shit hits the fan, you're outside and there's no power, and you're looking around, and it's like, oh, hi.
I mean, similarly here,
yeah.
Right? Like, I didn't know all of these neighbors until the tow truck existed.
Now they all know Christian. That's a story in itself. That could be a podcast in itself.
We're not going to really dive into the tow truck incident. But my point is, in the middle of the night, a bunch of people I'd never met before came out of their townhouses, got in their cars, and circled a tow truck so the guy could not leave here with people's cars.
You got people that legally should be here.
People that legally should be here.
Yeah.
And
with your car.
And that was the first time that I looked around. I was like, well, this is a little village. Like, all these people have each other's backs.
Yeah.
In
And it's unfortunate that it needs to always be under the duress those things happen. So in the tribal setting that way, in the ceremonial aspect, and trying to get us back to the roots of our tribal existence, which we do on the spiritual level, and then when you're out there camping and you're out in the res and you're set up in a situation that's been established for millennia, that this would come, every band would come with their little group and set up their teepee in their area, and they come and they all congregate together, and we pray together for the benefit of the whole, right, the bigger dynamic. So there's this rewiring that I have in my mindset, and things that I'm passing on to my kids that I think are really important to understand, that there is this aspect of how we live, and it doesn't need to be me ahead of you, right? It's a whole aspect of how unfortunately our culture has been thwarted with the aspect that the why shifts to so many people.
That me ahead of you thing is it's just people that don't understand the abundance of things we can be grateful for, the abundance of everything that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
I just coached a certification in Seattle, and amongst the people I was coaching, it was a group of 15 people. They were all awesome. I think it was the best workshop, best Spartan Obstacle Specialist workshop I've been to so far.
Awesome.
One of the people was an SGX coach, and 3 other people are coaches in their own realm. That's not something that makes me feel insecure. I'm stoked when I'm around other coaches.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much to go around. I encourage all of these people, the 3 other people that are not SGX coaches,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get them to do what I do.
Right.
I'm trying to give them my job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not that I don't love it.
Yeah, because it's not about that. It's about sharing the knowledge.
Not that I don't love
it's
how much I get paid. I love all of those things. I have the greatest fucking job ever.
Right.
But there's only one of me, right? And if I could share that, if we could have more people put on these workshops, like that's what I want.
Yeah, instead
I
of
don't
just
want these
15 people, it's 100 people.
Not to do that shit.
Yeah.
You know, like I want so many more people. There's so much abundance.
To be able to impact those million people.
Yeah.
To be able to reach out completely.
That's how it's done. That's how I impact millions of people.
Yeah.
And now, all the studying that I'm doing so that I can create more Spartan SGX coaches in the future. And even the fact that I was given that opportunity to even be a part of this was huge to me, you know, because I think when I became a Spartan SGX coach, like Dr. J like tapped into something for me. And man, it's been all these years, and now it's
Your turn to be able to
full circle.
Yeah,
Time to like return that.
Yeah.
Matter of fact,
Killer.
I became a Spartan SGX coach in September, I believe 2013 in Tampa.
Oh wow. Like literally full circle. That's like,
And this week I'm going to put on that certification with Dr. J for new coaches
in Tampa.
in Tampa.
Full circle. That's cool. Yeah, that's awesome. That's
9 years later.
How these dynamics work and the journey continues, and you'll be able to impact a lot of people, and we keep moving forward.
But it's we keep moving forward. But beautiful people, it is important to understand how big the world is and how much abundance is out there. Because if you were trying to prevent somebody from getting some shit, it's only keeping you from where you're trying to go. Like, that's it.
Yeah, that's the only it's gonna do.
You know what I'm saying? Like a coach writes a book. Instead of shitting on it, I buy that book fucking immediately.
Yeah. So
I want someone to buy my fucking book.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
And a million books on the shelf.
Supporting each other and moving forward, man. You know, it's like we've covered a lot of ground here, a lot of concepts, a lot of things that are intersecting points. You know, I think that's how usually our flow is, and I think that's pretty much the aspect of how our lives are. You know, the Sundance journey this year put me in the position I've been out there for. It's my 11th year, so being out there and making relations and putting the work in, and there's a lot of build work to be done to prepare the area where we're gonna dance. We prepare the arbor, and a fire burns for 4 days, and there's 5 sweat lodges, so you know the amount of firewood that is required to keep that going is pretty epic. So we're like in trailer truck beds with wood, and going out there, and that's one of my it's one of the funnest aspects to me, to be out there in a chainsaw and on this beautiful land out in South Dakota.
You
on
get
the plains. Yeah, it's such a privilege, right?
It's a privilege.
It's a full-on privilege.
Fuck yeah.
And throughout the years, I've been able to move my way along in the work crews, and you keep showing up and keep doing the work, and the elders and the people in the position of leadership start being able to depend on you, and you start learning, and they start sharing information with you. Whether it's literally how to cut the tree. It's like word out to my brother Ben. Ben's a firefighter, forest fires, fire jumper, and goes out and takes care of those forest fires, and so his skill set with woodwork, taking down trees, is like, it's what he does for a living. So it's like he's cutting those trees like nothing. So he shared a lot of knowledge with me this past.
A lot of stuff you can bring to Death Race.
A lot of stuff. Yeah, well, consistently, and I had my Death Race cap on, and people saw the posting, and they were like, what is this Death Race thing? And talking about it, I'm like, it's like, full on life race, and I share that a lot with people, and everyone's really intrigued because, there's a lot of aspects of Sundance that we can get into, and like I said, it's a kind of, it could be a long presentation to go into. I guess it can be short, but in a synopsis sort of way. But one of the things that we do is to be able to dance 4 days, abstaining from food and water, is really an endurance aspect of your body. Like really, really, like you're out there, and the weather this year was insane. We're out there 4 days. Second day was well over 105 degrees, somewhere between 100. Depending on who you talk to, is 105 or 115. You know how those things can be. So I'm splitting the difference, thing about 110.
150.
But at that point, you're out there and you're just getting bombarded by the element. It's just this powerful sun, and it's really getting into your mind. And there's like 250 dancers, and we're creating these movements in this beautiful arbor with the sacred tree of life, the Chelwakan, in front of us, and the prayer ties and this whole process and how that comes to be. And I was really in my head. Second day tends to be that way, and I was really like, and it's so indicative of things we talk about with the mindset, because I remember, we talk about when you're running, you're looking down, it's like you tend to kind of like your mind
spiral,
and you get in these mindsets, and
that 2 millimeters.
Yeah, exactly. There you go, 2 millimeters, and it's like right there. And one of the things I love is that, right? And you keep your head at that, because then you're looking, and I remember during the dance, I was just looking down, and it was the negative thought. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? All these things that are happening in my life that aren't going quite the way I want them to be at this moment, and the negative thought, and then those voices, that quintessential bitch voice that Andy Frisella talks about. But now it's like so much more than just, bitch voice sounds like this little binging on the side, but this is like, no, it's more of like this almost like presence of a gargoyle, of this, like, I wouldn't say demonic, but it's almost that way. It's that dark, because it'll take you to the dark places in your own psyche.
It takes you to dark because you have identified that it's taking you to dark places.
Yeah.
Because for everybody else, it's just the voice they listen to.
Potentially, yeah, that's true. I see that perspective. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah, for me, it definitely is. I see the darkness in it because that's not where I want to be, because I know what the quality of life is on the other side. And then something as simple, at some point when I was really like, at the point of quitting, and this is different than death race, in the sense that there's no EMT to be out there to be like, hey, oh, your pulse, you're this, you're looking kind of clammy, you're dehydrated. It's
there's
like
no waiver.
No, it's like there's no waiver. The waiver is your blood, sweat, and tears.
There's no one you can sue if shit doesn't work out.
If it doesn't work out, well, you should have known better, and you should have prayed harder, which is my point to that, because I realized at some point that I had been there, and I got out there to pray, to put my intentions, to have my things that were important for me, to what brings me out there every year. And as soon as I started, like, starting with putting prayers out for my parents, and my prayers always revolve around gratitude, right? Because I'm really grateful for a lot of things. I'm grateful for my parents, however it was, as complicated and as faulted human beings as they could have been, and things that they did, and all of the other people in my life, but I'm grateful for them, because they're all who helped me become who I am today. And it just shifted a little bit. 2 millimeters, just shifted a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because then instead of looking down, I started looking up at the tree, and looking at the tree, and the wind's blowing. Luckily we did have a breeze, because the sun is just beating. There's no clouds, and you're just out in the sun. And we do rounds. You're not out there the entire day. You're out there for 7 rounds of the day, but the rounds can be, anywhere from about 45 minutes to like 3 hours. So they can be long rounds, and this is just, and you're moving. You're not just standing there, you're just moving, and you're dancing, and the drums are going, and the songs are coming out, and the prayer, and all the songs are prayers on Lakota, and they have this sound system around us, so the ground's vibrating, and I look down, and I lead the line. So I have 22 guys that are looking for me down the road for my leadership, for how I'm conducting myself, how I'm the head right there, how my vibration is going to trickle down to how these guys, if I'm all done, if I'm in negative headspace, how can they not be in negative headspace?
That's what happens in hurricane heat, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter how you feel. You gotta portray how you want these motherfuckers behind you to feel. Because they're looking at you. You're a direct reflection of how much energy they're putting out. 100%.
So that's where, like, all these ways and then these aspects of life, that's why it's like, the endurance racing, appeals to me so much because it taps into something that I feel like, I've been doing now for, 11 years. This would be my 11th, and tapping into that. And then, at that moment when I put my energy into that prayer and I got out of my mindset, because I was about to quit, I was done. I've never come so close to literally just walking, just being, I'm done, and saying, tapping out, and then realizing that, I have these guys that are, now I'm responsible, in my understanding, in my aspect, I'm responsible for these guys. These guys are looking at me to hold a space for them. And if I just walk out, what is that going to say, right? What does that say about the whole thing? And then I'm like, all right, I'm going to wait till one of the breaks. I was thinking to myself, maybe I'll try sneaking out at that point, right? Because I was just, in my mind, I just needed to get out of there. I needed to be done. I couldn't be beaten anymore by this energy that was just coming down. And it was so much more because it felt like I was in mud, and there was some other dynamics of what some of the elders were sharing that they believe energetically was happening. Things were going on in the circle, in the dance at the moment, because everything's like reading tea leaves and these things. And the prayer got me through, so that I was able to get through and the round ended. When I started praying, the round ended quickly, right? All of a sudden, instead of focusing, oh my god, I started thinking about, love for my parents and kids and my wife and gratitude and New and Ani.
And did the round really end? Or just your headspace?
Oh, my headspace did. Yeah, no, I was probably out there for another, God knows how long. Yeah, it wasn't that. It wasn't. I used that in the sense of it just, I was able to stop, and then all of a sudden the guys behind me, looking down, and the guy next to me, good bro of mine, Juan, and word up to Juan. Thank you, Juan, for the support and holding that space. You were an amazing partner right there, because we were able to keep the flow going. And the next three guys next to him were Israelis. I call them the Sunddancers. They come out and the guys from Ghana. They're just with the heavy Israeli accent. There's full on, and we've been dancing together for 3 or 4 years. It's just amazing because there's these Israeli Jewish guys that are out at Sundance praying in this Native American ceremony. To give you an idea how wide and vast the spectrum of what this dance is. It's open to all nations, because in Lakota they use the term Mitakuye Oyasin, which means we were all related. It's like we are all related, and they refer to us being the entire spectrum of the planet. They didn't see it as a pyramid. It's a circle of life, Lion King. Yeah, there's sense to that, full on, because we are part of it. Because we're not, we're the apex predator in that way, because we're able to think out of. But at the end of the day, when we're done and said, we're in the dirt. We're part of the cycle. The worms are eating us. No one escapes that dynamic. Everyone has to go through that, unless you cryogenically freeze yourself for the next 200-300 years. Eventually, it's gonna you're gonna get consumed and become part of this flow. So that's really, really important to me, that aspect of understanding that we are all, and that's what's so powerful about the dance, and the way the leadership came to be, and how that Sundance, because at one point Sundance was illegal to partake, to actually happen, because of the U.S. government's relationship with the Native Americans. It's a religion of freedom, but for Native Americans, they couldn't pray freely this way until 1978, until the Freedom of Religious Act was passed. If people can
wrap their heads around.
Yeah, because that's mind-blowing. Yeah. And then from what I understand, also in Hawaii, certain spiritual practices weren't allowed to take place until the mid-90s in Hawaii. Like certain massages, particularly Lomi Lomi massage, uses the essence and uses the movements of the ocean and these elements that are out there. And it was a practice that was completely almost lost, because they perceived it as a spiritual practice. And there was laws, archaic laws in Hawaii, that are still being used. But I digress to the point that here we are, all these people from all these walks of life, all around, praying, putting all this energy, going through this hard physical challenge, holding on to the faith of the things that brought them there, the faith of what they're trying to do and what they need to happen in their lives. And for me, I know wholeheartedly that all of those prayers that are being answered are my prayers being answered.
Yeah, I want to touch on something you said earlier. If something doesn't work out, you didn't pray hard enough. That's a real thing when you're out there. The problem is, or not the problem, but the fact is that that's kind of a real thing with every aspect of what we do in life. we have just created these comfort cycles and zones where there's no consequence to that. So a lot of people go through life half-assing everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they've never been in a position of pray harder or die.
Yeah. In your life until that it literally presents themselves, and so often they will acquiesce.
You know? And it's
not prepared to face that challenge.
They're not prepared to face a challenge.
Physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And that's what these practices do. And, you know, a death race, a Sundance, a vision quest, a hurricane heat, all these things that are accessible tools. These are ways that give us the strength to be able to endure. And we are in a society right now that, look, at Sundance there's something very interesting that happens. It's a reflection of our society, is the fact that they always talk about the elders. These guys that started Sundancing in the 70s, they did it in an armed camp. Like, they were literally at war with, like, in 1973, Wounded Knee, and when the Sundance started at Crow Dog's Paradise, and where I danced in 1970, it was unarmed camp. You know, in 1974, the feds raided the camp and arrested a bunch of people, confiscated the tree. It was like a full-on situation. That's when our chief
confiscated the tree.
Took the tree down. Yeah, there's a whole story of how that went down. That was actually shared to me, because they took it down because there was natives that were working with the feds, that aspect of it, trying to get themselves in a better position, that, you know, saw the significance and knew the power of removing that tree and what that meant symbolically. And they, you know, and our chief actually went to federal prison for 2 years. Crow Dog went that way, and it was an aspect of being able to, you know, the camp being an armed camp, and these guys were cut from a different fabric at that time, which is the case that we always talk about, you know, like the World War II generation. Like, those guys, I mean, I'm not saying that they were better, because they all had hard lives and very difficult times to be able to articulate emotional aspects and being able to be even sometimes loving to their kids, because of how hard it was, how hard their lives were, you know, obviously. So then the next generation wanted to make it a little bit better and not to be so hard, right? So these guys are in that realm a little bit less. You know, a lot of these guys were Vietnam vets at that point. The next generation, so they danced a certain way. They talk about how things were for them and how really strict and really hard it was. And then it got a little bit softer and it got a little bit easier. And then, you know, here we are in this generation where I'm like, you know, the younger kids are coming up and everyone's being almost like, I won't say babied, but very more delicately handled, to the point that they're perceiving in some of the elders as being detrimental. Because it's supposed to be hard.
Yeah. I don't know whose quote this is. I heard this from John Lovell from the Warrior Poet Society. But I don't know, this is something that he came up with. I'm probably going to sound stupid because it might be a really famous quote. But he says something along the lines of, hard times make hard men.
Yes.
Hard men make for soft times.
Yes.
And then soft times make for soft men. And soft men make for hard times.
And that's where we are right
That's
now.
where we are right fucking now.
I mean, look, not digressing, but relating to that app, just kind of like that manly app. Was just
that app.
Just
my phone's recording right now because we're not a real studio. We're one iPhone. But I wish we could pull up that app and be like, what in the fuck is this?
Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's basically a Photoshop app that comes with templates for your abs and your chest and your arms and tattoos, and you can change your skin tone. And basically, so when you put your picture up, no matter what the fuck you look like, it's going to make you look like you've been at the gym for 75 days, twice a day, 45 minutes a day, eating a diet, drinking a gallon of water, putting in the fucking work. You know, what was great though, because I was so annoyed, I was like, you know, you want to write a strongly worded comment. I didn't, because I'm not going to waste my energy on that. But I looked at the comments to see what the feedback is, because I was curious. And every fucking buddy on the app was just bombarding how ridiculous it was, that this was even an option. And everybody doing so in their own aspect. So there was a little bit of like faith to me. I was like, okay, at least a lot of people see it the same way that we're seeing it. Because, dude, put in the work.
There's a little bit of faith because you read like 500 comments, but they have like 1 million downloads.
Man, I'm gonna go with
yes or no?
What Joey says, man. All you need is 3 good guys, and we can take over. What is his name? Joey Gomez. Diaz. I always forget his name. Joey Diaz. All you need is 3 motherfuckers you can count on, and we can take over this bitch.
And what he's referring to actually, I think, is about social media right now.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Because right now, some fucking dude is app photoshopping his abs so that he could have more fucking friends on social media. But the reality is, you only need like 5 fucking friends, man.
That's the reality. Yeah.
You know,
to live a good quality.
It's not fucking real to have 5,000 fucking friends.
Yeah, it's not. It's completely.
It's not tribal. It's not what we're fucking designed to do. Yeah. And I look at my dad, my parents came here to a different country, and they still have like this tight circle of friends back home, right? Like my parents have never thought of having 10,000 friends and 40,000 likes.
Yeah, it's inconceivable in the reality.
My dad just has people that he knows he can count on forever.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah. And that's sadly the aspect of like going back to the environment or how this generation is being, how this world that we're living right now is just the soft perspective. Part of that also plays into that because you don't, and you know this full on well, you don't know who's around you until shit hits the fan.
Oh,
that's the
1,000%
way you're gonna know who you can count on is when things go fucking south.
I saw somebody, because I now am on Facebook, because I have a Facebook group to help people. I don't really get sucked into it, but when I open it, I'll see whatever I open it to. And I have to fucking preface this so that it doesn't get mis-fucking construed. But somebody from my past, the first thing I saw when I opened it is that everybody wants to be a skinhead till you have to do skinhead shit. By skinhead, they're not referring to anything racist. Mm-hmm. So I want to be very fucking clear about that, right? Skinhead shit is something that started in fucking Jamaica. It's about music culture. It has nothing to do. But the rude boys, they were like the gangsters of their areas, right? And you hear that all the time. Everybody wants to be a fucking gangster until it's time to do gangster shit. Mm-hmm. Everybody's hard till gunshots go off.
Yeah.
Then what?
Then you know who's for real.
Then you know who's for real, bitch.
Yeah, exactly. An aspect. And I think we live in a culture where there are a lot of men that do have that. We in this country we have a generation of men and women that fought overseas, that are veterans, that were put in the position of doing incredibly, incredibly hard things. But we're talking about, less than 1 million.
Yeah.
And they're in a country of freaking 300, almost 50 million people. So that leaves a lot of people out there, especially generationally coming up, that are being, allowed to be, too comfortable. And in that comfort, there's no growth. And then when things get challenging, as life tends to do, people are going to react in all different ways.
I mean, and right now, they're even laxing military shit, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot.
Like they're making it easier to get in. The standards are different. We're talking about war right now.
Yeah, it changes dynamic.
I hear people talk about war all the time when they bring up AR-15s. Mm-hmm. This is a weapon of war. Not exactly. It just looks like a weapon of war. Mm-hmm. AR-15 is a semi-automatic rifle. It never goes fully automatic. It doesn't do bursts of fire. It's not a fucking M14. Like it's not. But what about making people of fucking war? Like now, our people of war are fucking soft.
Yeah, I mean, and the culture ends up reflecting that. I think there's a weakness.
We're making soft soldiers? What the fuck are we talking about right now?
It's very, very disconcerting to where we potentially could be heading to it as a whole society, which brings us back to Sundance and praying that way, and then being under duress, being under that state, and knowing how you're going to react. Knowing where your thresholds are You know, that's what I really loved about the death race, was being at that threshold of like, I can't, I physically am breaking down here, I can't go any further, and then working on it to be able to go further next time.
Yeah, and I don't subscribe to the, first of all, you can't anyway because you got to qualify. I don't subscribe to the idea that everybody should sign up for a death race.
Oh, absolutely not.
But I think manageable, even if it's hard to the point where you think you're going to die and you actually won't, everybody should do at least a 12-hour hurricane heat.
Yeah.
Everybody should get to the point where they're grateful for a glass of water.
Sundance. You go 4 days without food and water, and your relationship with water changes fully. Like when you're sitting there contemplating and really understanding the thirst that it is, 3 days in, you start contemplating what it is to die of thirst, but knowing that, and I had one of my years early on, I had a vision. I was lost in the desert, and I was just, it was like along the Rio Grande border, Mexican-US border, in that area, like that desert area, and I saw myself just wandering and just going down, looking for some source of water, and facing my reality, the reality that I was going to die. And then at some point in that whole, because you get into like a trance because you're in that state, it dawned on me that, it was actually the fourth day, I didn't think about it, that at that end of that day, the water was right there. Like I knew I wasn't going to die.
Yeah.
The reality of that I knew I wasn't going to die, even though like I might have felt like I was going to die at that moment. But I connected with that energy of how many people actually do go through that. How many people right now on this planet are dying of thirst, right? All over the planet, there's pockets of places that are completely arid and dry. Look in this country, look in Vegas where I was at, Lake Mead. I mean, they keep finding dead bodies in Lake Mead because they never thought it was gonna get that low.
The Lake Mead shit blows my mind. The water lines on the rock.
It's like ridiculous.
Like it's crazy.
It's a ridiculous amount of water that's gone. So, our relationship with these elements, and then the flip to that is when you receive it, is the gratitude, right? That energy that really moves things forward in our lives. And that's one of the beautiful aspects of the dance, of ceremonial, of aspect of Native American spirituality and culture, as I've come to understand it. Indigenous culture all throughout the hemispheres, Western and Southern, is the aspect of gratitude. There's always a part in the ceremony of gratitude, and I really am so happy that I've passed that on to my kids at this stage, that they'll sit at the dinner table and it's not like a long prayer. It's like, thank you for this food, thank you for this water,
just being grateful.
Thank you for this animal, thank you for the hands that made this happen. Just thanks, man. Boom, done. Enjoy your meal.
I feel like a lot of kids who've gone through like going to private school and like Catholic school or something, I feel like they have this misguided idea of what a prayer is, because they're just reciting shit from a book and they don't understand
completely.
Like, what am I praying for?
Yeah, completely.
What am I giving praise for?
Yeah, I always let Dakota, my 4-year-old, he loves to pray. He loves to, I was when we sit down at the dinner table and we were out with my in-laws, and we were actually yesterday having dinner, and he just has this he has this flow on his prayer, and it's so real because it's him thinking about what am I being grateful for. It's like he always says for the love, thank you for this love, the love we got to give, and it's like a little thing that he does, which is interesting, the way he words it and the way he processes that.
Does he start with beautiful people?
No, not yet. Sometimes he does. Sometimes he does do beautiful people, but he has this understanding that he is thinking. He's thinking in the moment. He's looking at the table. He's looking at the people around the table. Like always thinking, our sister Aixa cooked the food yesterday, and he thanked her, and when he thanked her, just like the look on her face, she was head down, and she's like, oh, why, just like a moment, right? Because that's important to be present. Let's not be programmed in these cycles sometimes, and people do get that. Even with mantras, sometimes it's like you're just reciting the mantras, and it can be very powerful to go into that hypnotic state fully, and I get that aspect of it. But it's also really powerful to understand what the mantra is really saying. Same thing with Lakota Sundance.
I think the mantra's different, at least to what I was saying, because coming from Catholic school as a kid, I think a lot of what goes on is you're praying your way out of
damnation.
Out of damnation. Everything's about repenting.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah. Yeah. I see
what
that
Dakota's
one.
doing is he is
Uh-huh.
grateful for things.
Mm-hmm.
When you're kneeling after confession, you are repenting for shit. You're not fucking grateful
For
for the
kneeling,
fucking
no.
air that you breathe,
No.
for your heart that fucking beats every day, for your lungs that expand and contract.
No one ever
repenting.
taught me that.
Mm-hmm.
But what praying was my salvation.
Mm-hmm.
But not the way that I grew up praying.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But it wasn't until I was fucking grateful for my fucking feet that I started to walk barefoot and really feel what my feet were about. It wasn't until I was grateful for this body that this body became what it became and what it keeps evolving to fucking become.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the mantra has that power of being able to fall into that cycle of the hip. It's almost like hypnotic in that way. Trance-like, ultimately, was the word I was looking for.
Trance-like, yeah.
Yeah, to hit
100%.
that zen, and then you can find a vibrational aspect in your being, like the song I was sharing with you, these vibrational tones of setting intention. But to set the vibrational tone out, you have to connect with that emotion, right? And then with the mantra, like when you're doing a mantra and it's like coming from the heart space or solar plexus, there's an energy and you're connecting to that. Whereas I think sometimes when you're just parroting a prayer, it's here. You're just hearing
1000%.
So powerful, man. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think
We covered a lot. We didn't even get into races.
We
It's
didn't
all
get into
good.
races. Yeah, Seattle. We had talked about more of that. It's okay.
There's,
That's it. We got things to do. There's a lot of stuff coming up.
There's a lot of stuff coming up. Are you going to West Virginia
West Virginia's what date?
next week? Not this weekend. The following weekend.
Hadn't really thought about it. Hadn't really put it on my calendar, but it's always a realm of possibility. Let me look. I have so much cooking and
You've
brewing,
got some
but
race codes anyway.
I
right?
got tons of race codes. I just gotta get out there and make it happen. I think about that. We'll talk about the date. We'll talk about it.
We'll handle it. Beautiful
Yes.
people. Thank you for today. And
Thanks for your time.
I appreciate all of the 6 people that watch this.
Hey man, every once in a while it spurts up. So
You know what I'm
share
saying?
it, share it. Comments too, and reach out to us. Communicate with us.
Yeah, and maybe we get somebody on the show. Other than
Yeah, I think
just
we're
us.
ready.
And
We're ready to
from
do
Paul.
that. Yeah, occasionally.
All right, my brother.
Thank you, baby.